Walter Hill's mega-classic urban action drama The Warriors is full of colourful and dynamic characters ranging from the stone-cold second-in-command leader of the biggest and most dangerous gang in the city, who seems to have accidentally superglued his shades to his head, and whose followers are too scared of him to even blink, to the all-out comedy of Luther, the mischievous loose cannon who shoots and kills the first-in-command leader of the Rifts, a cult-like dude named Cyrus, and he's a barrel of laughs too. This movie is crowded with entertaining characters, many of whom are fascinating enough to be the star of their own dedicated feature film, and yet despite the fierce competition, there's one character who I've found over the years is the most admired and respected among film fans, and that character is Ajax, who is played perfectly by a young James Remar. Time and time again I find that when discussing this movie with mutual fans, one mention of the name Ajax and everyone lights up with enthusiasm. I've lost count of how many times I've heard phrases like, Ajax was cool as fuck. More often than not, I've heard people cite Ajax as being their favourite character in the whole movie, even though he's not the central character, and he's taken out of the narrative just over halfway through the story. He falls for a honey trap in which a cop woman has made herself intentionally vulnerable by sitting alone on a park bench at night. And this ending for Ajax is humiliating because he mostly brings it on himself, and yet we miss him for the rest of the runtime. The post-Ajax portion of the movie is still very good, but the tone of the story is massively shifted by Ajax's demise. It becomes a more somber film. And the film sort of encourages us to miss Ajax. Another Warriors character named The Fox is actually killed on a train track, and their initial leader, Cleon, is almost certainly beaten to death, but the group don't show much in the way of grief for their loss.
Did you see him get busted?
I seen him, then he wasn't there no more. I was hauling ass.
Why don't you look around, make sure we're okay?
Here, the Fox's fate is completely ignored, but Ajax gets his own funeral of sorts, even though he's alive in a jail cell somewhere.
Cops got Ajax. We don't know about Swan.
Oh, Jesus. Are you sure about Ajax?
Real sure.
I bet he went out swinging.
And it's not like he's going to be doing 20 years for what he did here. Maybe he's going to be in for 6 months, 12 months, I don't know, but he's not in for life. And he's not even dead. But as far as the viewer is concerned, he may as well be dead because he's disappeared from the movie. The film starts off by presenting a kind of fantasy impression of street gang life, but as the story unfolds, that illusion is slowly stripped away, and the tragic, humiliating end of the line for Ajax is one of the key events that peels away the gang fantasy. I'm going to get more into that aspect of his role in the film shortly, but first I'm going to offer some general observations about his behaviour. Perhaps the most important thing is that Ajax seems to be neither a hero nor a villain, and he certainly has personal flaws. He's always looking for a fight for the sake of it and doesn't seem to care who he fights or for what reason.
Maybe we'll get to waste a few heads along the way.
You just soldier and keep your mouth shut.
Not exactly a hero attitude, is it? He wears gloves and practices punching handles on the train as if he's permanently ready for a boxing match. He's also a bit stupid at times.
I'll tell you something. I'll bet nobody's even gonna be there.
He says before they show up to join a crowd of thousands.
Bullshit, man. There ain't nobody on the street.
He's right. We're acting like faggots.
He says before a busload of thugs show up. And of course he stupidly falls for a honey trap set up by the cops. But perhaps the least redeeming feature is that he doesn't just try it on with the cop woman, he gets physically very aggressive, possibly with intent to actually rape her.
So rough, come on. Get it on.
Oh, you don't get it. I like it rough.
Is he biting her there? I can't tell. Now don't worry, I'm not going to go off in this video on a Me Too rant, and I do have some very positive things to say about Ajax's character. But I'm going to talk in depth about this scene because it's a key moment in the film for him, obviously, but it's also quite an emotionally powerful and unexpected scene. And though this scene wasn't particularly controversial when the movie came out, these days, if a movie like this came out and had a scene like this, it would be controversial. I'm not saying that's the way it should be, I'm just saying that's the way it is. But first, let me show you the description of Ajax given at the start of the original script. Ajax is listed last among the warrior team, yet he isn't the most minor character. I think he's listed last because he is the one who is most disconnected to the chain of command, as in least likely to follow orders. But also he is described as possibly having overtones of cruelty, and a natural inclination for mixing violence and sex. And that pretty much spells out what's happening in this scene. But in Ajax's defense, the cop woman very much encourages him to try it on.
Why don't you sit down? Keep me company. Oh, look at those muscles. I bet the chicks like all those muscles. You want to show me how you play with the chicks?
When he first approached her, he wasn't trying to force himself.
You feeling all right, lady? You need a little help or something, lady?
In his own amateur way, he was trying to seduce her by apparently showing sensitivity to her needs, not force himself on her. But she pretty much asks him to try it on. And she was even throwing flirting smiles at him as they walked past. And even as he grabs her, she says, "Don't be rough, we'll get it on."
So rough, come on. We'll get it on.
Oh, we'll get it.
That's right, that's what the script says, "we'll get it on." In other words, there's a certain amount of consent. If the police were to encourage and entrap someone in this way in real life, I'm not sure that the court trial would be straightforward. There'd be some hefty defence statements and some serious courtroom arguments. But think of it this way. How differently would this scene affect our perception of Ajax if he'd just snuck up and dragged her into the bushes without a word and started stripping her off and raped her, or he'd just walked up and said, "Get your clothes off and I won't hurt you"? We would have totally lost our sympathy with his character and we would have wanted him out of the narrative. And so, being that he is clearly led on like this, we end up feeling a bit sorry for him. He's even dumb enough to try and fight the cops with one wrist cuffed, and so he'll almost certainly get a hell of a kicking down at the station, and he'll probably do time for attempted rape and assaulting a police officer. So although we see how his attitude is his downfall in this scene, surprisingly we don't really lose our identification with his character. It's very unusual. It's unusual for such an appealing character to meet his end in this kind of way. Any bland scriptwriter following the standard action movie cliches would likely have Ajax single-handedly wipe out half a dozen cops or rival gang members in his final scene so that he dies gloriously in the battlefield in a great act of sacrifice and defiance, if you will. But Ajax's journey is much more interesting and original. Instead, his final glory moment occurs a couple of scenes in advance during the fantastic fight between the Warriors and the Baseball Furies. And we'll get to that scene in a minute. But I first want to go over a different scene that has implications about the gang's attitude to sexuality, not just Ajax's. The character Mercy becomes a love interest for Swan later in the movie, but here she's grabbed and manhandled by Ajax, of course, and the dialogue that follows is unclear about what the Warriors' intentions are.
You gonna jump me?
She's worried the gang are gonna jump her, which I assume means beat her up. That would seem a nasty thing of them to do, but she did just go out of her way to deliberately cause a massive street fight herself, which could have gotten a lot of people killed. These two gangs wouldn't have clashed if she hadn't have interfered. But there does seem to be a gang rape implication here. Ajax is about to go for it, but like with the cop woman, she is flirting and inviting an encounter.
Well, maybe I'm looking for some real action.
But what about squeaky clean Swan? What's his intention here?
Maybe we ought to pull a train on you. You look like you might even like it.
Fuck you!
Real tough chick.
We don't get to find out because the orphans show up wanting a fight, but the script says that Swan uses his knee to push her legs apart and he pulls her skirt up. And what else would that be but an intent to sexually assault? That is, unless she actually consents. And the aggressive sex suggestion is furthered by Swan tearing a piece of her skirt away to be used in a petrol bomb. The Fox takes her by the hand and pretty much drags her off to the train station with them. And in the script, Fox says to her, "You're the only hostage we've got." So that's the reason for dragging her there. That's not explained in the film. But in the movie, Swan arm links her away from the Fox as if to say, "This bitch is mine." Originally, the Fox character was supposed to be the love interest for Mercy, but this was changed while filming. So in the movie, Fox gets killed and Swan runs off into the tunnel later on, alone with Mercy. In the script, it was the Fox who did that. And the reason I bring all this stuff up is to point out that while Ajax clearly has sexually aggressive tendencies with the potential to commit rape, other members of the gang, including their slick leader, have an attitude with women at times as well.
Where'd you get the coat?
You ask a lot of questions.
Don't give me that.
Wait a minute. I can't go in there. It's a men's room.
Are you kidding?
And of course, I'm not including the Lizzie's gang in that equation because they deserve the violent response that they got. If some wench comes at you with a gun or a knife, you're going to do what it takes to take it out of action. So anyway, that's a lot of the negative stuff about Ajax and the attitude to sexuality that he's got and some of the other warriors have got. That's all that stuff out the way. Now, I mentioned earlier that Ajax's glory moment is the Baseball Furies fight scene, and that his follow-up scene is his downfall, and that's unusual. And recapping the Furies scene, 4 of the warriors, including Ajax, are chased by a gang of guys with baseball bats. The odds against them are so strong that, for once, even Ajax agrees that they should run.
Maybe we better take off.
Yeah, right.
But previously he kept telling the gang that they shouldn't be running away, that they should stop and engage the fight. After a long chase sequence, one of the warriors named Cowboy gets tired and says he can't run anymore. Ajax is the only one by his side, and the other 2 warriors have ran off in a different direction so that they can re-emerge and take out some baseball furies from behind. But Ajax doesn't know this. As far as he's concerned, it's just him and Cowboy against the entire gang of the baseball furies. Now think about Ajax's options here. He could just carry on running and let some of the furies beat the hell out of Cowboy and probably kill him. This would increase Ajax's own chance of survival, and frankly it would be an understandable choice because they're probably both going to be dead anyway if they stop. But what does Ajax do? After all his egotistical rants, after all of his bigging himself up banter about saying, oh, we need to stop and fight, he walks the talk. He decides to stop and fight to the death rather than leave his friend to die alone. That choice in itself redeems Ajax of all his previous flaws. You gotta respect a man who stands by his buddy in a situation like this. A lot of men would not do this for their pal, and it's a really nice contrast against him casually insulting Cowboy on the train in the title sequence. It shows that he didn't really mean anything bad by that. But Ajax's sudden elevation of heroic coolery based on a sense of loyalty doesn't stop there. He takes out the first Fury, no problem. And we could say he was aided by the guy not expecting him to suddenly turn around and fight. Cowboy gets taken out, probably too tired to put up a fight anyway. So now it's just Ajax against how many guys with baseball bats? 5, I think. Now Ajax doesn't know that his other 2 buddies, Swan and Snow, are about to come to his aid. As far as he can tell, this is it. Him against 5 guys with baseball bats. I think 99% of us would panic and run in a situation like this. But not Ajax. He's not going to give these punks the pleasure of seeing him run away anymore. And he even had an opportunity here to pick up the baseball bat dropped from the first guy that he took down, but he doesn't. He defiantly faces the lead baseball fury empty-handed. In itself, that's a major league fuck you. I'm so confident I can kick your ass that I'm going to let you have the baseball bat advantage. Now we could just say, but wouldn't they all just attack him at once? And yeah, maybe they would. I mean, the film isn't realistic in the fighting sense. But at the same time, everything's about ego with most of these characters in the film. And where would be the glory for them in all just ganging up and beating the hell out of this guy with bats together? This guy wants to take Ajax down for himself, so maybe Ajax not picking up that other bat fooled the others into standing back. I love the personal insult trade-off here. Ajax with his ultra cool line,
I'll shove that bat up your ass and turn you into a popsicle.
That's definitely one of the most memorable lines in the film, and the Fury responds with a weird snake-like attempt to hypnotise his prey with fancy bat movements. This comes off like a variation on a gunslinger showdown, and director Walter Hill has basically said in at least one interview that most of his films are basically allegorical westerns. I remember the first time I saw The Warriors as a kid, and this little build-up here was the most edge-of-my-seat moment for the whole movie, and other viewers who I've shown the movie to for their first time have typically had the same response. They're glued to the screen wanting to know how the hell Ajax is going to get out of this dire situation. And so when he completely wipes this guy out, it's one of the most satisfying action movie moments in cinema history. Talk about a home run. And as if that wasn't cool enough, Ajax casually leans down to pick up the guy's baseball bat so that he can carry on the fight against the other 4 baseball furies by himself. but he doesn't need to because Swan and Snow are now on the scene to help. From here on, Swan gets most of the action points, but Ajax isn't done. Whacking a guy in the arse adds insult to injury.
I'll shove that bat up your ass and turn you into a popsicle.
And he literally picks up a guy and body slams him like he's in full caveman mode. Finishing off the scene, Ajax and Swan look to each other with what I think is a moment of strong mutual respect. Ajax put himself on the line to save Cowboy, and Swan and Snow put themselves on the line to save Ajax and Cowboy. And isn't that the whole point of being in a gang in the first place? So that you've got loyal buddies who'll even the odds for you when you're about to get your arse toasted. And maybe there's also a little bit of acknowledgement here in that Ajax is looking to him as if to say, finally, we stopped and fought. Well done. Now, writer-director Walter Hill has stated that if he had known that the Ajax character would be so liked by the audience, then he would have kept him in for the rest of the film. But thinking about it, I reckon the movie would be worse off for it because it wouldn't fit with the overall themes of the story, and I think it would make his character less interesting. The tragedy of Ajax's demise is quite dramatic and unexpected, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, we don't just watch movies to feel good emotions, we like to see tragedy in movies as well. It's part of life. We don't always want the happy ending. I think it's also notable that the second half of the movie is very different to what was scripted, with a lot of the changes instigated by the decision to have the Fox character killed off and for Swan to hook up with Mercy instead. Vermin was supposed to get shot and killed by the Lizzies, Swan was supposed to be captured and straitjacketed in a cell by another gang, who we don't see in the film, and then he unbelievably manages to escape and shows up for the final scene on the beach. I'm glad they didn't put that in the film because reading it in the script it seemed kinda corny. And the Baseball Furies chase is very different in the script too. In the script, the character Cochise is present instead of Cowboy. Cochise is the one with all the beads around his neck, and in the movie, he is instead present in the fight with the Lizzies. In the script, Cochise lags behind in the Furies chase and is beaten to death by the Furies and his body rolled off into a river before the Furies give chase again. So the Furies definitely had an intent to kill in this scene. And instead of Ajax stopping to help out a buddy, he lags behind and gets tired on his own and stops to fight, then Swan and Snow help him out. I think the film version is a hell of a lot better than what was scripted because it gives Ajax a highlight moment of respectability on account of his loyalty to a friend, instead of just having him cast as the mindless thug throughout the entire story. And his crowning glory line of the movie wasn't in the script.
I'll shove that bat up your ass and turn you into a popsicle.
Like many fans of the Warriors, I consider the Baseball Furies chase and fight to be the highlight scene of the movie, which is pretty impressive considering how many great scenes there are. And even though lead character Swan does some serious arse kicking in this fight, this is fundamentally Ajax's scene. It's his scene, and it's the best scene in the movie. At this point, Ajax as a character has been elevated so highly in the audience's view that to have him carry on until the end of the movie would seriously undermine the presence and personal journey of lead character Swan. I think having Ajax get taken out of the narrative based on weaknesses in his attitude that are already being established in earlier scenes, I reckon that was the right way to go. In fact, I'd say it was a requirement for the rest of the entire story to work. And part of the reason I say that is because Swan's journey, though he never explicitly announces it, involves him effectively retiring from gang life at the end of the film. In so many words, he announces this intention to his love interest.
This is what we fought all night to get back to. Maybe I'll just take off.
You know I like traveling too.
In the final shot of the film, Swan, for the first time, walks at the back of the gang. In other words, he's not war chief anymore. The psychological element of Swan's journey is essentially him gradually coming to realise how ridiculous the whole gang culture thing is, and deciding to get out. And to that effect, I think of Ajax as being a symbolic character, representing the super tough, fearless archetype that most street gang members wish they could be. But Ajax's self-inflicted demise contributes to Swan's growing realisation that gang life is a fantasy illusion. So I think of Ajax and Swan as being sort of alter egos of each other, representing the struggle between wanting to live the gang life and wanting out of it. And that's why the two of them verbally clash throughout the film again and again.
Who named you leader? I got as much right to take over as you.
Now, you might think I'm getting too psychoanalytical with this alter ego interpretation, but Walter Hill has done this before. In his classic cop buddy action movie 48 Hours, the interracial teaming up of Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy's characters as the good guys was directly mirrored by their alter ego bad guys, the interracial teaming up of Sonny Landham and James Remar's characters. James Remar also played Ajax, of course, and even in The Warriors there are indications that the Baseball Furies are ghost-like parallels of the Warriors themselves. Look at the physical mirroring aspects of the fight choreography. Ajax and his Baseball Furies nemesis each take a guy down with 2 hits, and then they turn to face each other in a similar stance like they're looking in a mirror. There's more of these mirroring moments in the film if you pay attention. This kind of stuff happens all the time in fiction. An internal conflict within the lead character is played out in their conflict with external characters. Swan letting go of his thug side is partially played out by the demise of Ajax. So I think the idea that Walter Hill intended to convey to us by the end of the film is that we would come away realising that Ajax's tough guy virtues were illusionary. However, the Ajax character took on a life of his own that I don't think Walter Hill intended. Like Han Solo in Star Wars, Ajax has usurped the central character to become the most popular character in his own right. But why is that? Now, obvious factors would include that Ajax is a good-looking guy, but not in a pretty way. He's got an edgy, dangerous gleam in his eye. James Remar also played a pretty menacing villain in 48 Hours, another Walter Hill film. He's also got a hell of a physique, not bulky, but he's got that lean definition similar to the likes of Bruce Lee. We could just say, oh, he appeals to us because he's arrogant, but I don't think so. There are lots of arrogant characters in movies who audiences don't really take to this much. I mean, even in The Warriors itself, Luther, Vermin and Cyrus are all arrogant, but they don't garner as much admiration as Ajax. Actually, Luther is a very much loved character, but more for his comedy value.
How come you're so happy about this? I'm having a good time.
There is the factor I talked about earlier in that, despite picking arguments with his fellow gang members, when the shit hits the fan, Ajax is fiercely loyal to his pals. It's a really respectable trait, but he's not the only one of the Warriors team who has that loyal devotion. Though I do love the juicy irony that Ajax's desire to stupidly stay and fight against ridiculous odds in any gang fight situation, a desire that he's been expressing since the start of the movie, it actually becomes a redeeming character trait for him in the Baseball Furies fight scene. I tell you what, if I was going to be in a gang fight against the odds, I would definitely want Ajax on my team. You know he won't abandon you, and you know he'll throw everything he's got at the enemy. But having studied all of his scenes, going over them to try and suss this guy out, I eventually came to the conclusion that the central appeal of Ajax isn't necessarily his bordering on stupid courage, nor his loyalty, but instead it's his very strong sense of individuality. Ajax doesn't recognise the appointed pecking order of the gang because he's an individual. He frequently expresses defiance of whoever is deemed by the gang collective to be in charge.
Maybe we'll get to waste a few heads along the way.
You just soldier and keep your mouth shut.
I don't want to be warlord.
He considers the Warriors to be his buddies, not his colleagues, and definitely not his superiors. I think that makes him even more likeable because one of the big ironies of street gang mentality is that the gang members' personal rebellion against conformist, restrictive, oppressive society is contradicted by them conforming with the rules and pecking order of the gang itself. So I guess you could say that Ajax from the start of the movie has already got what Swan wants. Mentally, he isn't shackled by the rules of the pecking order of the gang. He is his own person, an individual, not a moulded cog in a wheel. And if we're completely honest about it, most of us admire that because we also belong to restrictive gangs. They just don't usually carry the gang label. Trying to climb the pecking order ladder in a workplace or a government or the military isn't fundamentally much different to being in a street gang. We follow strict rules imposed by the perceived leaders, and some of us go to self-degrading lengths to please those gatekeepers. We often bend the rules, or to be blunt, break the law in service of the organisation, just like gang members do. Very few people in society can truly be considered courageous individualists, though I think most of us subconsciously would like to be. And that's why we love Ajax. In fact, his individuality is so strong in this film that he doesn't even conform to the expected hero or villain traits that are typical in an action movie. Now, that's unusual, isn't it? We see a guy who, more than anyone else in the Warriors gang, tends towards making his own decisions and thinks and says what he believes instead of psychologically surrendering to the official line, whether he's right or wrong. If Ajax was as intelligent as Swan, then he would be gang leader. When he challenges Swan for leadership, Swan offers him a fight to decide, but we don't get to find out whether Ajax would have gone for it or whether he would have even won the fight, because the others step in and basically announce that they would prefer to follow Swan's lead. So what's he going to do, fight them all and tell them, I am your leader, whether you all like it or not? Nah, he's really only got one choice, fall in line or lose as friends. By the way, a happy accident I noticed that gives a little subliminal boost to Ajax's presence happens when the title sequence music kicks in. The Warriors are getting on a train, and as Ajax gets onto the train, a sleazy synth element kicks into the score, and this is Ajax's very first screen moment. Almost certainly a happy accident, but I like it anyway. In several ways, Ajax's individualist philosophy actually bears truth on human nature. At the beginning of the movie, he's the one who identifies that Cyrus, the big guru gang leader, is a fake idol. Cleon and Swan haven't made their minds up yet.
Everybody says that Cyrus is the one and only. I think we better go have a look for ourselves.
And collectively, the surviving warriors take until near the end of the movie to figure out what Ajax was saying from the outset.
Big Cyrus. He was gonna run the whole city. What crap that was.
When you're president of the biggest gang in the city, you don't have to take any shit.
Fuck him.
If they'd listened to Ajax, then they wouldn't have bothered going to the stupid meeting in the first place, and they would have saved themselves a lot of hassle, and lives would have been saved. There's even a deleted scene where Ajax, at the very beginning of the movie, tells Swan, of all people, that going to Cyrus's gig is a bad idea.
I don't like what we're getting into. This whole thing stinks. Just because some jerk named Cyrus wants a conclave in the truce doesn't mean it's a good thing. I'm sick of hearing about Cyrus.
You listen, that's the way it's going to be.
So he's got a strange combination of technical stupidity and streetwise intelligence. Wisdom, even. Aside from his key positive trait, individualism, Ajax arguably has more raw courage than any of his buddies. And in itself, that has its own appeal. Courage is a necessity in life if you don't want to be pushed around and controlled by street thugs or pen-pushing bureaucrats. You need courage. You can have all the intelligence in the world, but if you've got no guts, then you're screwed. Courage needs to be balanced with wisdom, of course, but even in Ajax's raw, untamed form, we admire courage because we know how important it is in the real world. Another positive trait is that Ajax appears to have a certain happiness to him that's untainted by the brutality of his surroundings. A very clear pattern I noticed between him and his rival character Swan is that Swan hardly ever smiles or laughs. Swan is pissed off from the very beginning and clearly wants out of the gang. He just hasn't admitted that fact to himself yet. He doesn't even seem to particularly enjoy the company of his warrior comrades.
I'm sick of waiting for trains.
Berman, sit down and shut up.
Okay.
On their way to the big meeting, they bounce around on the train, and Swan doesn't join in. He just stands there, looking at them with that kind of sulky expression that he has through most of the movie. And when the gang escape from the Turnbull ACs, Swan doesn't celebrate with his buddies.
Give me that fist, buddy. Yeah. When we get there, that's when we've made it.
He's right, of course, but surely he could take a minute or so just to express a little bit of joy at not getting killed by a bus full of thugs. Even after a kick-ass fight with the Furies, Ajax expresses buddy celebration to Snow. but Swan robotically just walks away, his only gesture being to indicate that they are now armed with bats. And then Ajax will stupidly throw his bat away when he sits down with the cop woman at the bench. Of course, Swan is the most intelligent and wise of the whole bunch, though it was scripted that the Fox would be the wisest and most intelligent, although that was changed. And that's part of why Swan wants out of the gang life, the fact that he's so smart. And yet, even at the end of the film, when the danger is gone and he's found himself a new girlfriend, he expresses no relief or gratitude, not even a faint smile. Now, don't get me wrong, Swan is a great character, I really like him, but like Ajax, he has some severe personality flaws. The other guys laugh and joke with each other and mess around, especially Ajax. And that kind of rough and tumble play fighting among friends tends to actually be a sign of friendly affection, disguised so as to not come off as being a faggot, as Ajax would say. So who's the more contented soul, Swan or Ajax? Obviously Ajax is the happier man, and we could say that's because he's a bit stupid and has no ambition. But another way of looking at it is that Ajax doesn't have any illusions that the poverty-stricken, violent society that he lives in has anything else to offer. His attitude is similar to that expressed by the character Mercy when Swan criticises how she lives.
I want something now. This is the life I got left. You know what I mean? You get a warrior, huh?
Rather than sulk constantly about violence and poverty, Ajax has sort of found his own peace by embracing the insanity of the world that made him. You know the way they say that like Buddhists are kind of like the calm eye of the storm? Well, Ajax is like the happy eye of the storm. In reality, I think a guy like Swan wouldn't be very well accepted in the gang, specifically because he doesn't let his hair down and have a few laughs with the guys. That's essential group bonding psychology. And here's another irony between these two characters that I don't think was intended. When the four of them pass the woman on the bench, that's the woman who turns out to be a cop who gets Ajax busted, Swan says something pretty nasty.
You never were very smart.
Ajax has just heroically saved Cowboy from being killed, he's shown his loyal commitment to his friends, and now Swan's insulting him. But Swan can do better than this. He did a good job of parleying with the orphans in an earlier scene to avoid a fight, except the troublemaking girl stepped in and stirred things up. So where's his diplomatic ability now? And there's another thing. When he says, "You never were very smart," has Swan already figured out that this woman might be a honey trap, that she might be a cop? When they passed her, Swan immediately saw what was going to happen next, because he was glancing back and forth between Ajax and the woman. And funnily enough, this is the first time and only time in the story that Swan and Ajax are seen walking together next to each other as if they're close buddies. Typically Swan would be at the front and Ajax would be at the back because he's the one who least wants to follow a given gang leader. But anyway, if Swan had figured out that she was a cop, why didn't he say so? Did he intentionally let Ajax fall into the trap because he viewed his wild, uncontrollable behaviour as a threat to gang cohesion? There is a deleted scene in which Swan expresses genuine regret and upset at having not prevented Ajax from approaching the girl.
Where's Ajax?
Cops got him. By the time we got back, there were 3 squad cars.
I should have made him come with us.
It ain't your fault. You made a mistake. That's the way he was.
Yeah, right.
And I think that should have been kept in the film because, as it is, the movie gives the impression that Swan simply wanted Ajax out of the way and couldn't care less what happened to him. As much as I like Swan's character for other reasons, his attitude to Ajax here has always seemed like a bit of a betrayal. And I suspect that Swan's cold distance from his gang buddies is what prevented him from being the more memorable and admired character for many fans of the film generally. At the end of the day, what really lets Ajax down is his determination to take extreme risks merely to express defiance. Whenever the gang are chased, if Ajax is involved, he's typically the last one to run. He'll even stop to middle finger a gang of 30-odd men brandishing weapons, and he almost misses the train on account of it, and he would have been killed if they'd have got him. Even here, this shot is brief, but everyone runs for cover while Ajax just stands there out in the open. And when others show practical rationality or even just a basic sense of danger, Ajax refers to them as faggots or wimps.
30's a lot more than 8.
Not if they're wimps, and I'm sick of this running crap.
There's plenty of women back home.
Maybe all of you just go on faggot.
Fucking wimp.
But what was the point of calling the cop a wimp? He's just making it worse for himself. It's his insistence on taking irrational risks, putting himself on the line for the sake of a thrill or to express open defiance, that leads to his demise and his exit from the story. And that's his weakness. He has a habit of taking his greatest strength, his individuality, he takes it into the realm of self-destructive ego. But having said that, Swan's refusal to remove the gang identifying jackets in order to peacefully go to a train station can be considered stupidly egotistical as well.
Go as civilians, okay? You go as soldiers, I gotta come down on you. Now take off your colors.
Fuck you.
In fact, if the whole gang had removed their jackets for the journey home, then other gangs wouldn't have been able to identify them and hunt them down. So ego was actually a bit of a problem for the entire gang, and not one of them removes their jacket at any point in the story, even though they find out that they have been blamed for killing Cyrus. So there's a little bit of Ajax stupidity in all of them. Just to finish off here, James Remar, who played Ajax, was a really good actor, great screen presence. He had a great look and a distinctive masculine voice. He was only 25 when he played Ajax, and he was awesome as a bad guy in Walter Hill's 48 Hours as well. He was also cast as Hicks in Jim Cameron's Aliens, but according to available reports, he and Cameron clashed on set in some way, so Remar was fired from the role and replaced with the equally excellent actor Michael Biehn. Although Remar continued on with a successful acting career, I never saw him in any roles that were as memorable as his roles in The Warriors and 48 Hours. He did have the father role in the TV show Dexter. That was a fairly big part, but it didn't allow him to shine like he did in those earlier Walter Hill roles. Such a shame, because I think he had potential to be a major leading man star. And the same goes for Michael Beck, who played Swan. He had a long acting career too, but never achieved the heights that his role in The Warriors suggested that he might be capable of. I do recommend, though, checking out a horror movie that Michael Beck did called Chiller. That's worth a watch, if you can get hold of a copy. And of course, check out Walter Hill's 48 Hours if you want to see more of James Remar at his best. You've been listening to Rob Ager. Thanks for watching. Please do consider supporting me on Patreon or going to my website and ordering some of my digital downloads. About 70 to 80% of my content is offline that has to be ordered, but there's still plenty here on my YouTube channels. Take it easy, folks. Bye for now.